About tonight's top story here on Sky. The headline, hostages set for freedom in key step to end Gaza war. We'll be right back. Do stay with us.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away. So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories.
This is insane.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa. I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
They call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News, get the full story first.
Welcome back. You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines with Financial Times Associate Editor and columnist Stephen Bush and former Conservative Special Advisor Anita Boateng. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. Well, after 2 years of conflict, the final release of Israeli hostages from Gaza and the coming peace summit, a top story in The Guardian. Hostages set for freedom in key step to end Gaza war. This is the front of the Mirror on that story, hope amid the chaos. The Eye describes tomorrow's summit to finally agree the peace deal as historic. The Metro pictures families of Israeli hostages waiting for their release with the headline, "The day they feared would never come." The Times, too, focuses on the hopes and prayers of those hostage families in Israel. For the Mail, the hostages and indeed the whole world await what the paper calls a day of destiny. Away from Gaza, Donald Trump's name also features in Stephen's paper, The Financial Times, as Wall Street's biggest investment banks expect massive increases in revenue thanks to his economic policies. The Telegraph reports that the Chinese spy trial row could expose the UK to risk of falling into a debt trap with China. The Express has news of a new ultra-fast scan which could apparently boost the rate of diagnosis for people with dementia. The Sun has a story about England footballer Marcus Rashford and delays with the building of his dream home in Cheshire. And finally, the Star goes bonkers over conkers after Prince Charles, or King Charles, apparently saved the World Conker Championship by donating 300 of them from his estate at Windsor. So we welcome Stephen Bush and Anita Boateng to take us through the newspapers this evening. And obviously one story, the impending release of the hostages in Gaza. The Metro, their headline, the day that feared would never come. That the thought of many of the families pictured there, those in Hostages Square in Tel Aviv. This is a momentous moment, isn't it? Yeah, it's a huge moment. You do sort of have to credit Donald Trump in part for his role in bringing this about. Many feared and they would have never, in the case of the 20 survivors, but of course there are people who've died in the last 2 years, people who thought they'd never get to bury their loved ones. And of course it also unlocks the end of, well, at least hopefully a pause in the war in Gaza as well. So it's a momentous and a good day, fingers crossed, for the world and for the Middle East. Anita?
Yeah, it's rare to be hopeful when you're talking about the situation, but I think if you think about the complexities and the level of things that needed to go right to even get to this phase, there had to be a plan put together not by the Israelis, and there was not going to be a plan put together by Israel that anyone was going to accept. So having, the Tony Blair Institute and Tony Blair being a kind of pivotal part of this, having Donald Trump being willing to cajole, to threaten and to be direct to make that happen, having Hamas be so depleted that they perhaps don't have a strong negotiating position, having the reality of the Qataris being both engaged but also extremely distressed after the attack that took place in Qatar. There were lots of components that came together, and this is probably like the end of the beginning of the first phase. But actually, it's really, really tough to get to this point. It'll be even tougher to go further, but this is a real moment of hope, and we should stop and pause and appreciate that.
And we should just say, obviously, expecting the 20 live hostages, but that is an exchange of 1,700 detainees and also 250 Palestinian prisoners. Yeah, and so to move away from the message of hope, since 1980, whenever Israel has tried to solve its security problem through military means, they've been very successful on the battlefield, but after a couple of years, the problems become more intractable. The people on the other side of the table have become more extreme. And although not all of the 2,000 people are connected with Hamas's military wing, I think, actually, in some ways, Hamas have been handed a lifeline by this deal. But also, they've partly been handed a lifeline by Israel's overreaching. In the bombing of Qatar really upset a US ally, really annoyed Donald Trump, and that has led to a peace deal that Netanyahu, I don't think, really did want to be here signing this deal. We saw pictures earlier of Donald Trump making his way to the Middle East, first to Israel, where he'll address the Knesset and also meet hostages' families and hopefully the released hostages, the 20 that are due to be released tomorrow morning, and then on to this peace summit, his peace summit, in Egypt. Yeah, in Sharm el-Sheikh. And I think that actually Donald Trump is likely to get a rapturous welcome because as much as there are obviously people with pretty strong views in Israel about the deal that's been struck, I think that he's managed to get Israel to concede things that they probably wouldn't want to in an ideal situation, partly because they overplayed their hand and partly because I think Donald Trump got tired. But I think that Stephen, you're right to kind of focus on some of the hostages and the kind of the political price that's paid there. I mean,
You may recall Sinwar, who was quite a big, he was considered to be one of the architects of the 7th of October bombing. He was released in a hostage negotiation way back in 2011. Like, there are going to be kind of significant figures for Hamas, perhaps not the priority figures, but some real prominent ones that will be released. So it won't be entirely uncontentious. But I think for tomorrow, one hopes it will be sort of a day of celebration of sorts, and particularly seeing those hostages being reunited with their families, having that kind of welcome, and the aid trucks crucially coming through. I think those are big and significant and positive moments.
One of the names mentioned that Hamas would have wanted release is the prominent Palestinian political leader Marwan Barghouti, but as I understand it, he's not to be released, and the names that Hamas has put forth are those as the political prisoners that they would want released. They're not on the list.
No, and that of course is part of why Netanyahu has been able to keep his government on board, right? If there was a sense that at the end of all of this, Hamas were still politically a viable force, which they may yet turn out to be, then that would be unsurvivable and unsupportable for Israel to sign up to it.
And so to the peace summit in Sharm el-Sheikh tomorrow, following on from Donald Trump arriving in Israel tomorrow, what are we expecting from that? Is that sort of dotting the I's and crossing the T's, or is there real business to be done?
I mean, there are an awful lot of I's and an awful lot of T's. So actually, I think, in some ways, it's been incredibly difficult to get to phase one. Phase two, it's like going from climbing a hill to climbing a mountain. It's absolutely ginormous number of things that have been left vague, which is actually what you need to get momentum going in a deal. But, what is the role going to be for the Palestinian Authority? How are you actually, can you demilitarize? Why would Hamas demilitarize? How do you manage the difficulties around that? How quickly can the Transitional Authority get up and running? Is there going to be meaningful support from lots of the countries in the region to enable, peace to resume? I could go on and on and on. So I think the next stage actually is even more difficult than the one before, and even more critical to ensure there's momentum.
And we know that Hamas are saying that they're not going to hand over or disarm to any authority that isn't Palestinian-led. And we spoke to a senior Hamas official, Yalda Hakim, our lead world presenter, a couple of days ago, and he said that disarming would not be part of their plan. Handing over politically would be, but not disarming.
Yeah, and this is Tony Blair is one of the people on this new Board of Peace. One of the big challenges they are going to have is, how do you actually enforce law, have a functioning state, disarm the militants so that Israel has that sense of security, and still have a realistic and functioning Palestinian state? Because ultimately, if you don't have the ability to arm yourself, you're not a state, right? That's actually the oldest thing about it, is having your monopoly of legitimate violence. So this is going to be the big challenge now. They've obviously got this high-level agreement, and that's great, but can you actually deliver the type of transition of the kind that, Paddy Ashton was able to achieve in the Balkans in a much more difficult, much more fraught, and in many ways more intractable situation?
One encouraging news line that we had this evening is that Mahmoud Abbas will be in Egypt, in Sharm el-Sheikh, so that is encouraging that other sides will be at those peace discussions. Thank you both for the moment. Going to take a break. Coming up, why are Wall Street's biggest investment banks praising President Trump? We'll have that story from the Financial Times and many more after the break. Do stay with us. Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place, and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
Mayhem in the Middle East, rippling in America's West.
Get back! Get back!
The resolve of these protesters is now being seriously tested. I saw police being forced or pushing young men and women to the ground as they made almost 100 arrests.
None of this is a peaceful protest.
I'm Martha Kellner, and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles. How are you feeling? I am angry.
It is an anti-woman agenda.
Will the cold affect your voters?
Well, we have a lot of tremendous support, but it's nasty out there.
Anybody else?
Should the Defence Secretary and the Vice...
Wait, what country are you
from? The UK?
Okay, we don't give a crap about your opinion and your reporting. Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
President Biden, do you trust President Xi? President Biden says that this meeting went well. He said real progress was made on a whole host of issues. Will your candidates win?
I hope so. I think they will. I think they're great candidates.
There's no doubt that Kamala Harris and her team are harnessing the power of social media. Do you think Kamala is brat?
Kamala's brat.
Are you scared?
Yeah, we were scared. It was terrible. Strong wind, building tearing down.
As them say, God works, so we can't do nothing.
The people here know that worse storms may well be on their way. Sky News, get the full story first. Free wherever you get your news. Ghislaine Maxwell has pleaded not guilty to all 6 charges against her. Mum, how are you feeling today?
Jeffrey said, you answer to Ghislaine, you just don't cross her.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling.
It's not his country, it's ours.
Sky News, the full story first, free wherever you get your news. It's half an hour now past the deadline that Hamas issued, and we've now seen a third barrage of rockets coming in.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away. So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
Welcome back. You are watching the press preview. With me still, Financial Times Associate Editor and columnist Stephen Bush and former Conservative Special Advisor Anita Boateng. Let's take a look at the FT front page. And seemingly, Donald Trump's economic policies are paying out. The investment banks are reporting record figures for their revenues. We have lights of Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Bank of America, to a total of $9.1 billion. Anita.
Yes, so there are some positive signs expected to top $9 billion in the third quarter for the first time since 2021. And obviously, there was a huge boom in 2021 post-COVID when things started to get going again. And so there's some really positive stuff in here about how the pro-growth environment and lighter regulatory touch are boosting sentiment. I would say, as much I love and adore the Financial Times, we talked about it, I think this is very optimistic. And I think that ultimately there are some signs that things like AI investment, there's a few pockets of booms, but also, I mean, the expectations are not that growth is going to keep going, that actually it might slow towards the end of the year. But there's nothing you can complain about when it comes to much more takeovers and listings.
But 13% increase from a year ago and 50% improvement on the lows of 2023.
Well, this is ultimately about Donald Trump's regulatory policy, so he's much more pro-merger and much more pro-acquisition than the Biden administration. So that's why this is good news for the banks, because mergers are away from it. However, the bad news for the banks are, of course, his anti-free trade policies, his tariffs and his unreliability. So, as we do say in the story, so there's some very good news for the banks here, but tempered, of course, by the fact that, only a couple of days ago he was putting on yet more tariffs on China, and then he was also doing it in his classic chaotic way. So, yeah, some positive changes for the American economy, but some very negative ones, and potentially some very negative ones for American households and for the American consumer.
So do you think this is over-optimistic then?
No, I don't think it's over-optimistic. I think the economy is a big and complex thing. There are some winners from Trumponomics and there are some losers. it's good that he is, you know, more pro-merger. It's bad that he's significantly more anti-free trade, and it's bad that he is quite so hard to predict, because one of the things that businesses and we all thrive on is stability.
Certainty. Yeah, definitely. I think that's going to continue to be
one thing you're not guaranteed with Trump, isn't it? To the eye, I've just got time to talk about the upcoming budget on November the 26th. The eye looking at a stealth tax hike against what was promised in the manifesto.
Yes, I mean, I think it's whether you're going to freeze income tax thresholds, but this really comes down to what tax is Reeves going to increase in order to kind of address the black hole, but also actually continue to make progress in what she wants to when it comes to spending. But in reality, the government is going to keep tinkering around, trying to make sure people don't notice that they are increasing taxes. And that is going to lead to kind of odd policies, like perverse incentives. It's going to hit the growth agenda. And you're going to end up in a situation where the public are going to continue to feel disgruntled. So unless Reeves makes a tough and bold decision, maybe that's breaking the tax pledges, I would suggest, then you end up in a situation where actually you're muddling through, not raising enough, and having to do this over and over and over again, and steadily chipping away at growth and confidence.
Do you think she categorically does have to break those tax pledges?
Well,
in your estimation,
I think I don't think there are any good choices, but I think the idea of changing the fiscal rules doesn't make any sense to me. And the government has manifestly shown that it cannot cut spending, and therefore, what are you left with?
Stephen?
Yeah, I think, look, you can either cut spending, which clearly the Parliamentary Labour Party doesn't want to do and the country doesn't have much appetite for. You can do lots of weird fiddling tax rises, which hit growth, have odd things you don't expect. Or you can break the promises and hope that the improvements in our public finances and the state of our public services by the end mean people have forgiven you. None of those choices are particularly good, but it feels to me fairly obvious that the best choice for them to make would be to break their promises on tax rates, rather than them going, oh, I'm sure there's some way that a friend of a friend can, you know, they've just got to get out from under every budget being this continual speculation.
OK, Stephen and Anita, we shall see on November the 26th. Seeing the 11. Coming up next on Sky News, the US President heads to the Middle East for a Gaza peace summit. We'll have the latest from the region. Do stay with us.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories.
This is insane.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa. I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
They call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News, get the full story first.
This is Sky News at 11 o'clock. The headlines this evening. Free within hours. Israel says the remaining hostages will be released by Hamas early tomorrow morning.
Everybody's cheering at one time. That's never happened before. Usually if you have one cheering, the other isn't.
Donald Trump is on his way to the Middle East, sure of a hero's welcome. But in many ways, the ceasefire and release of the hostages are just the beginning. In Gaza, the desperation clear to see, with aid starting to trickle in as families return and contemplate their future. And the Prime Minister arrives for tomorrow's peace summit in Egypt, as one of his cabinet is branded delusional for saying the UK played a key role on Gaza. Also tonight, fresh questions over the government's handling of the China spying case, as a senior minister says the National Security Advisor had no involvement in its collapse. A 13-year fight for justice in Kenya. The family of Agnes Wanjiru head to the UK, seeking the extradition of the soldier accused of her murder. Plus, farmers welcome reports that the Treasury could be reconsidering its plans for inheritance tax. And we'll have a full look at the front pages in our press preview at 11:30. Good evening. Israel says it expects the hostages who've spent more than 2 years in captivity in Gaza to be freed early tomorrow morning. It promises to be an extraordinary 24 hours in the Middle East, with thousands of Palestinian detainees due to be released after the hostages' return. Donald Trump flying into a hero's welcome before addressing the Israeli parliament and then flying to Egypt, where he'll host a peace summit. Tonight, it's been confirmed the Palestinian President, Mahmoud Abbas, will also be there. But away from the spectacle of Donald Trump's visit, the hostages and their families need to begin the process of rebuilding their lives. And the Palestinian people face the almost insurmountable task of rebuilding Gaza. Our international correspondent, Alex Rossi, reports.
It is with apprehension and dread that Mohammed begins the long journey home. His family's life piled onto a small cart. He doesn't know what awaits him, only the destruction in his neighborhood is almost total. As he draws closer, the road becomes harder to follow. Rubble strewn across the path, the air thick with dust. Every step takes him deeper into heartbreak.
The road is closed. We managed to come through on foot. Here is the house, completely destroyed, as you can see.
Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians in Gaza are making this painful journey home. The euphoria the war had ended has given way to the sobering reality, the sheer scale of what's been lost. As the flow of humanitarian aid begins to increase, the level of need is painfully clear. Every truck making its way through this shattered landscape is surrounded by desperate crowds. How Gaza will be rebuilt is a question no one can answer. But the focus now is on the ceasefire and the release of hostages. And in Tel Aviv, in Hostages Square, after more than 2 years, they are hoping the captives will be home very soon.
We are with our families, we are with the families of the hostages at large, and with the families of the hostages whose lives have been taken away by these savages, by these terrorists.
The October the 7th attacks left deep scars across Israel, and while the end to the violence brings hope, it also stirs powerful memories of the day that changed this country forever.
There is, though, still much that's unclear about President Trump's peace plan. Significant questions remain. How will Hamas be disarmed? And who will step in and rebuild and rule the Gaza Strip?
Across Israel, preparations are underway for the US president's arrival. Here he is very much the man of the moment and will receive a hero's welcome. He'll meet with families of the hostages and address the Israeli parliament.
everybody's cheering at one time. That's never happened before. Usually if you have one cheering, the other isn't. The other is the opposite. This is the first time everybody is amazed and they're thrilled, and it's an honor to be involved, and we're going to have an amazing time, and it's going to be something that's never happened before.
As he left Washington to head to the Middle East, there are still many unknowns about the Trump plan. He says he hopes to achieve a broader, long-term settlement in the region, but that will be far more difficult to deliver. Alex Rossi, Sky News, Tel Aviv.
Well, once Donald Trump has met the hostage families and addressed the Israeli parliament, he'll head to Egypt, where he'll be joined by world leaders at a peace summit. Our US correspondent Mark Stone has the latest from Sharm el-Sheikh.
It is the beginning of work, and it is certainly a victory lap for Donald Trump. But you know, as Don was just describing there, I don't think we should be, we need to remember that this is not a deal done. Yes, it was last week that the two sides agreed what they agreed, whether we call it a truce or a ceasefire or phase one of Donald Trump's plan committed to by both sides. It's not done till it's done. And that is why tomorrow is such a critical day. And when we hear that Hamas is saying that Israel is not abiding by its side, we've heard that before. Things have fallen apart before. So this really is a massive, massive day where things may not go to plan. But as you say, Donald Trump believes that he's now got both sides to a place that they have never been before. And that's why he thinks it's worth coming to both Israel and here to Egypt, where so many different world leaders are getting together. We're talking about more than 20 world leaders, plus foreign ministers from many other countries as well. I can hear planes overhead, some of them landing this evening, some in the morning. And all of them together will look at what Alex Rossi was talking about in his report. The day after, who governs Gaza? What peacekeeping troops are on the ground? Egypt today said they'd be willing to put peacekeeping troops on the ground, only if the UN is the umbrella organization. So blue beret peacekeeping troops from the Middle East, perhaps. That's new, and that's very interesting. Then what about the Palestinian involvement? Well, I can confirm tonight that Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian president, will be here tomorrow. As of this morning, it wasn't guaranteed that he would come. We now know that he will come. Alongside him will be his number two, who met, interestingly, with Tony Blair today. Tony Blair is going to hold a key role in the transitional government, this technocratic government. Many people are sort of find it breathtaking that he is going to take a role, but the Palestinian authorities say that they welcome that. They want him to take a role, possibly because they really don't think there's any alternative, and they want to be able to prove that they can do it on their own and that he can be out of that job very, very quickly. An absolutely huge day tomorrow, and extremely unusual as well, pulled together in the space of just a couple of days.
Well, as we were hearing, the Prime Minister has arrived in Sharm el-Sheikh for the peace summit, but one of his cabinet was branded delusional today for suggesting the UK played a key role in the Gaza deal. Our political editor, Beth Rigby, has more.
Look, it's widely known, or thought in some circles at least, that Keir Starmer's a bit of a Trump whisperer. This Democrat of a Prime Minister has somehow managed to win over a Republican president, but his Education Secretary learnt the diplomatic lessons a very hard way today when Bridget Phillipson went on Trevor Phillips' Sunday show, and in talking about this peace deal, she referenced the US but did not reference Donald Trump himself. This is what she had to say earlier.
We have played a key role behind the scenes in shaping this. It's right that we do so because it's in all of our interest, including our own national interest, that we move to a lasting peace in the region. These are complex matters of diplomacy that we are involved in, but we do welcome and recognise the critical role that the American government played in moving us to this point. What matters now, of course, is how we move beyond this immediate end to the war, moving towards that lasting peace that we all want to see.
Now, Keir Starmer has been at pains at every moment to reference Donald Trump and his role in securing this breakthrough with Prime Minister Netanyahu in particular. And Bridget Phillipson's failure to do so sparked the ire of the US ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, today. He tweeted out with that clip, "I assure you she's delusional," he said of Bridget Phillipson. "She can thank Donald Trump anytime just to set the record straight." So a bit of difficult diplomacy there. Number 10 sources simply saying this evening that the Prime Minister has been very mindful of praising Donald Trump, and you can see his words for yourself. But look, in the bigger scheme of things, UK sources are saying that the UK had some role in helping behind the scenes. Jonathan Powell, the Prime Minister's National Security Advisor, was here in Egypt, and I'm told that he's been talking with the President's special envoy every day. But look, the fact that President Trump has managed to convene 20-plus leaders, they're only told on Friday to get to Sharm el-Sheikh for this historic signing of the deal, speaks to his influence. It also speaks to the need for these leaders, or desire to these leaders, to acknowledge that, but also try to have a role in phase 2 here in the reconstruction of Gaza and the leadership of Palestine during that process. And they will be here in a ceremonial way, if you like, tomorrow, but they will be hoping that that will lead the way to more involvement in the long-term planning of how to get past the stage 1 of this deal, if indeed it happens tomorrow. And as for the UK, they're going to put in 20 million of aid immediately to help with sanitation in Gaza. But this, the first step really on a very, very long journey. And you will see lots of leaders here tomorrow wanting to catch the eye of Trump and to exert some influence in this peace process.
Beth Rigby there. A cabinet minister has told Sky News that Sir Keir Starmer's national security advisor did not play a role in the collapse of the China spying case, amid mounting scrutiny over the decision to drop charges against 2 men accused of working for Beijing. Bridget Phillipson insisted that Jonathan Powell was not involved, a comment immediately called into question by opposition parties. Nick Martin reports.
These are the 2 men at the heart of a spy case causing a rift between Downing Street and the White House. Former parliamentary researcher Chris Cash and academic Chris Berry were charged with spying for China. They denied the charges. Last month, that case was dropped, allegedly after the Crown Prosecution Service met with officials, including National Security Advisor Jonathan Powell, seen here on the far right. The government has repeatedly confirmed no ministers were involved in the decision, and now say that includes Powell himself.
Yes, I can give that assurance. We're very disappointed that the CPS were not able to take forward the prosecution.